This live presentation was produced in Ashland, Oregon by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. RVML relies on the support of our volunteers, members, and donors to organize and present these programs. For more information about this presentation, or to borrow, download, or purchase other recordings from our catalog, please visit our website at rvml.org.
Welcome to Life Passages, The Soul's Journey. Today you'll be sharing a talk that I'm giving at the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library. And welcome. I'm glad you can join us. I usually like to start with either something meditative or some sound or both. So I think we'll do that in a moment. People are still wandering in, so we'll let them do that around what we're doing. And I'm adjusting to being in rows. I'm used to working in a circle where everyone can see everyone, but we'll just know that we're all here, and that's a good thing. For many years, I taught a series of workshops called Spirit Quest, and that was based on the Native American medicine wheel teachings, not so much just as a doorway into Native American living, but more as a universal model and map of how we live our life here on Earth, how we connect with spirit, nature, and our own deeper nature, and the seasons of our living, just like right now is the spring, thank goodness. And both in our world, there are the seasons. We're just coming out of a long gray winter. And then in our inner world, we also have seasons. So how to live those seasons, how to embrace them and work with them. And in that workshop series, I often shared a song at the beginning, and I'm feeling to share that with you right now. It's a Native American song. Some of you may know it. And it's often used to begin a ceremony, to begin a sweat lodge. And it's a calling the spirit song. So we can think of it as calling in our own deeper spirits to be here tonight, welcoming each other's spirits, and calling in the spirit of what wants to be shared here tonight in a good way. So I'll sing it 4 times, one for each of the directions. And it's just a way to begin. It's a way to, as I said, to call in the spirit, to let the spirit of this meeting come here. Because it's not just me that is a doorway of this spirit, it's all of us together. And so we invite that. And as I said, your own deeper spirit to really be here and fully. Sing it twice more softly, and let the drums speak to you. The heartbeat drum beat echoes the heartbeat of the earth, they say, unites our hearts. We each have a heartbeat. We're all one heart. the spirits that we are into the one spirit that we formed together for at least tonight. As I was singing that song, I was realizing that there's also another level to that, which is welcoming the spirit of our guidance. We could think of that as our higher power, our guiding presences, also honoring the spirits of the people that lived on this land, right on this very place even, where we are standing today. There were people, of course, living all over this valley for 10, 20,000 years before us, so we honor them too and their spirits. Thich Nhat Hanh is a Vietnamese meditation teacher and kind of a saintly person, worked hard to defeat the war in Vietnam to save his people. He was there and then was exiled. And are some of you familiar with his work? Yeah. Well, he speaks of 4 kinds of ancestors that we have. There are blood ancestors that we know about. There are our spiritual ancestors, which are the beings that went before us, who brought forth those spiritual ways and wisdoms that we follow, such as Christ or Buddha, Muhammad, those people that walked before us to make a way for us spiritually. And there are also, maybe this is 3 kind of ancestors. Now I'm a little confused. There are also our land ancestors, and those are the ones I was just mentioning. The people that lived here before us, although they're not blood related to us, as we live on the land where they live, we have a resonance with them. And sometimes we can feel maybe a connection or some assistance from them. In my writing music, that's kind of where the music began, was felt like hearing old songs that were left on the earth and in the streams or the rocks. And I fully believe they are there. A lot of people describe having these experiences, being out in nature and hearing these old chants. So I think what I'd like to do is, before we go further into the talking part of our evening, to share with you one such song that came to me from, I think, from the old ones. That's what it seemed like it was left there. And invite you to meditate to this song. It doesn't have lyrics. It's just the sound of a stream, and my voice comes and goes. Sometimes I layer it over so it sounds like several voices. Little piano, little Native American flute. And with the sound of the stream, I'll invite you to go on a journey. And the title of our talk today, which I kind of picked out of a hat, Hearn said, "Why don't you do a talk called An Evening with Nancy Bloom?" I was like, oh my God, it's got to have some kind of a title. So it couldn't just be about me. So I called it, as you probably know by now, Living an Inspired Life, Living the Spirit, Awakening Joy. So I'll share a little bit about my life, and hopefully a lot that we share will be empowering to your life. That's my hope. Which is always my hope in the workshops I do. So this first journey then I'd like to invite you on will be to this song, and I won't sing it because I'm singing it on the album, but I'll talk to you quietly as it's going. So I invite you to, if you're willing to, close your eyes. And I know it's been a bit perhaps of a sacrifice, or I would assume so, that you had to come inside in such a pretty day. So you can close your eyes, and I'd like to invite you to find your way to a world that you go to in your inner world, a world of beauty in nature perhaps, by a stream, or flowing water of your choosing. The title of this song is Stream Song, so as you hear the sound of the stream in it and my voice, just know that that's inviting you to find your way now, to be very present by a stream or flowing water that you can sit by and observe and hear the beautiful sounds of the stream flowing by. And the stream is always flowing, it's always changing, never stays the same, always flows on downstream. Things come from upstream, flow past you, and on downstream. So as you hear the music, you can sit by the stream, hearing its sounds, enjoying being in nature in a beautiful place by this flowing water. And you can even see reflected in the stream images of your life, your just recent life, recent events, the last few days. And just watch those images of the last few days flow on past you and on downstream and away, as all things do. Just honoring what those things are that you're observing of your life and letting them flow on downstream past you and away, blessing them and releasing them as they go, honoring what they've been, acknowledging them, and letting them go on downstream. Just being there by this flowing water, observing, being present to the sounds of the water. And then coming before you, you might see the waters of the present time. Today, the waters of now. What is it like for you right now? On this day, in this very moment, seeing, feeling, sensing, hearing, all that is the resonance of today right now and how it is for you. And even those waters are always flowing on downstream and away. Always flowing on. And the next moment comes and the next. And how is it feeling as you become aware of the inflowing currents of upcoming times, the near future? How does that appear to you and feel to you as you see it revealed in the flowing waters coming toward you? And letting your sense of that also flow before you and on downstream. And away. And I'd like to invite you now to allow to come toward you the waters of the future, the near future that you would like to be living. The responses you would wish to have to these upcoming times that you're aware of. Just the way you choose to be living these upcoming days ahead and weeks. And if you like that way of being that you see mirrored and reflected in the waters, or you feel the sense of it, if you love it even, the waters and the experience of your choosing, you could, if you wish, choose to immerse in that. Or just observe it, resonating with the way you would wish to and choose to be with the upcoming days ahead and weeks ahead. And when you're ready, you can just bring yourself to simply savoring where you are by the stream there, taking in whatever is most valuable for you in this experience, whether it's just the place where you are or some insights you may have had. And then you can bring yourself to eyes open when you're ready. Gently. And if you'd like to share anything about that, you can, or we'll just move on. There'll be time later also for sharing. So, living an inspired life and living the spirit, the subtitle of the talk, and awakening joy, these are more available to us as choices than we might think. So they're ways of embracing these ways of life. Maybe I'll regale you with some stories of my own journey in that living an inspired life thing. I got to be about 30 and I was becoming distraught about the fact that I didn't know what my purpose in life was. And it doesn't sound like a big problem compared to a lot of people's problems, but for me it was becoming a problem. It was, it didn't feel good to be here and not know what my purpose was, what to put my energy toward, and it began to trouble me. So that coincided with a time in my life where I finally realized that I was in a lot of dysfunctional patterns that were repeating. So I found out about a counselor to go to and decided to see this person who was highly, highly, highly recommended. But then right before my appointment with him, I fell in love again, so I called him, "Oh, I don't need you." Well, a year went by, same old patterns. I called him again, "Yes, I do," and luckily he could see me. And when I went to see him, I did also talk about this feeling of being unsettled with no purpose. And he said, "Oh, if that's something you really, really want, to find your life purpose, well, just turn up the volume on your soul, and your soul won't let you rest until you find it." And within a few months, I did find it, and it was turned out to be healing. So I dedicated my life and all my talents and gifts, which I didn't really even know what they were, to that purpose, and that felt right to me. And it was interesting. As soon as I stepped onto that path, everything changed. It gave me a real benchmark for decisions, like people I was hanging out with. Well, did they really serve my calling and my purpose or not? Oh, if they didn't, well, move on. So it helped me make saner decisions that way. And from that moment, you know, they say when the student is ready, the master appears. A lot of teachers appeared in my life to further this path of healing. And one of these teachers was a young woman who was 24, and at the time I was volunteering my services doing hands-on healing, spiritual healing, and counseling at the Berkeley Holistic Health Center. And this woman came, and I also had sought to gather intuitive tools to myself to help people understand the origins of their illnesses, because often they didn't know, I didn't know, how am I going to help somebody if we don't even know the root cause of that? So this young woman came, and she just simply wanted a reading around her health. So I did this reading, basically just tuning in. It's pretty clear. You can sense whether people are thriving or not. And what I saw and sensed was total blackness. Her entire energy field felt completely black, which was very distressing to me to see. And I didn't quite know, what am I supposed to say to this young woman? But I said, well, you know, your light, your inner light that can help you heal is being obscured right now, and I can work with you to help that change. And so she wanted to work together. We worked together doing this spiritual healing. Turned out she had cancer, and the year before had had a stroke and been left partially paralyzed and blinded. So she was in a pretty bad state, very depressed and despondent. And this had actually, I found out more as I went along, this had actually been a lot of her life. Very depressed. She had a very abusive childhood. Her sister at the age of 12 had killed herself. She had wanted to kill herself. She was a year younger. I mean, it was really bad. And I felt sorry that I had her bring up all this because it was so painful. So I was saying, well, gosh, did that feel painful to have to look at all that? And she said that one of her things about eyesight was she spent most of her childhood on what she felt like it was a distant planet, very, very distanced and far away from people. And she couldn't see well as a child, but the stroke had left her more blinded. So I was asking her, well, was it painful to have to acknowledge this? And she said, no, I feel great. And I was like, really? Because usually her demeanor was, so why do you feel great? She said, because I realize that I created this cancer and I can change it. Now, it's much more complicated than that. We don't just create an illness, but this was her view of her situation. And so we worked together to change that, and I donated these sessions. She didn't have any money whatsoever. She hitchhiked to see me and had some mishaps along the way a few times that were kind of echoing her life journey. But she did turn that cancer around, and the medical people couldn't find it anymore, and she was all excited. So then she wanted to be able to walk again normally and see again. So I was like, well, I can't promise anything, but we'll give it a try. And she accomplished that. And so then I was so excited about what we did because it seemed so simple. It was the God-given gifts that we have to lay our hands on another person with great commitment and love toward their well-being. And some simple tools of her coming into some acknowledgement of the origins of the problems and some self-healing tools that I was giving her. And she was doing juicing and different things. So I was like, I just got so inspired. I mean, first we did 3 sessions a week, then 2, then 1, and she was better. That I thought, well, I'm going to teach this. So I felt like she gave me a great gift. She taught me the power of these things. And because of her, I ended up for about almost 30 years teaching hands-on healing as therapeutic touch to nurses and spiritual healing at Unity Church in Hawaii and different places. So, you never know who your teachers are going to be. Some of them were the people that taught me healing, but she was a teacher. There are teachers everywhere, of course. So the healing. So then I was like, okay, this is my passion and my purpose, this healing work. And then it didn't take me too long to realize that my initial assumption, which is, oh, this is the work that Jesus did. You put your hands on someone and they're healed. Sometimes. But a lot of times there's more to it than that. So I began to gather tools to help people work through the more to it than that, the emotional, spiritual, psychological pieces. And of course, at first when I realized that healing was my path, I thought I should learn everything, like acupuncture and herbs, and then I realized those aren't my forte. I'll just do the parts that I'm good at. So I eventually was trained in hypnotherapy, psychosynthesis, and got a master's in counseling to work with these underlying things. And then that in itself is a healing art, I found out. So I was happily going along with this purpose, thinking this is my life, and it's very inspiring. I love teaching the workshops and personal transformation workshops, began to teach the ones on the medicine wheel, like I mentioned. And that first 2-3 weeks that I went to see that therapist, a couple of songs had showed up, and I was all excited about those, but that was like 30 years ago. So, however, turning 50, I felt on fire with creativity. It was just like, all of a sudden, I felt like I was a volcano, It's like all this energy is coming up, and I didn't know what it was for. So again, there was like a not knowing thing that was kind of, And I had been a visual artist before I got into the healing arts, so I thought, I'll try that. Nothing happened there. And all of a sudden, it was the music. So the music came forth, and it's again, a path of inspiration, which is, I believe, a word that means filled with the spirit within. So through the spirit, these songs, these melodies were coming, which is a kind of ecstatic experience, not even kind of. And lyrics would come, and sometimes together, or then I'd have to work on them. And I was very content just doing that. It was such a delightful thing to do, and I kept the songs in a drawer, and it was fun. And then I went on a vision quest because I felt guided to do that. There's an empty nest thing going on with my son leaving, and I was like, well, I've got to do a quest. Most of us haven't ever, probably in our culture, very few of us do any kind of quest into adulthood. Has anyone here done that, to empower yourself into adulthood? So anyway, we need that, and that's one of my firm beliefs. And so belatedly, in my early 50s, I did a quest after having observed what happened to my son when he did his quest, which was very powerful. And out on that quest, I was given the strength and the kind of like a mandate to bring this music out. So I was like, ooh. Again, it's sort of, so okay, I dedicated myself to healing. This is healing music, so okay, I'm doing it. And while I was working on that, which was a big leap for me, not being so trained as a musician, working with other musicians and co-arrangers, I received a spirit calling, so to speak, to start this TV show. And so my response to spirit was, you gotta be kidding, come on. I've got a private practice, I'm doing this album. Enough already, I can't do this. But then I just followed what I was guided to do. And lo and behold, the TV show was so much easier to create than these albums, especially in the studio. You go in there, half an hour later, you have a finished show. It was so gratifying with the first one to see produced by Nancy Bloom, it took me 5 years to make this album where it says that. So anyway, and you were telling me you watch the show regularly and really enjoy it. And so I'm always surprised to hear from people that do it. So basically, this is my journey, living an inspired life. It's just kind of putting one foot in front of the other and going with what I'm inspired to do, guided to do. And it works when I do that. When I don't do that, it doesn't work so well. So it's also seems to be about cultivating my connectedness as I go along. And I'm sure that's true of most of us. We feel disconnected, we feel discombobulated. So that is an ongoing journey of learning to stay connected. Today I got some bad news about 3:30 in the afternoon. I was like, Arr! It's like, no, I'm doing a workshop this evening. And I had to say to myself, well, what is really the source of my good in this world? It's spirit. It's not the things of this world. So I can't just get tweaked about that. But, we have to coach ourselves sometimes to stay with those things that gift us with fulfillment, with some life of the spirit inside, and that awaken joy in us. How many of you read the Course in Miracles or parts of it? Have somebody read it? Yeah. Well, I remember reading, it's maybe a fifth of the way into it or something, a fourth of the way in, reading this thing that really surprised me. It was saying the purpose of life is to be happy. And I was like, oh my God. And I thought it was service. Well, I think it's all of the above. But happiness is really important. It's partly why we're here, to live the fullness that we are, including the joy. So that was an interesting thought. Yeah. And I keep being reminded, yeah, it's important. It's important. So I've been reading a book lately called How We Choose to Be Happy. And it's not the greatest book, but it's got some great things in it that I'm liking. And one of the premises is this kind of thing, that it is really important to be happy. We can choose to be happy. We deserve to do that. And so I'll just share with you the first 4 parts of that, and maybe we'll do, I don't know if you have something to write with here or you want to do this at home. You can tell me by voting in a moment. But the first 4 sections of the book are intention, the power of your intention. Second one is, accountability. It's so easy to say, because of this person or that happened, I can't be happy. So accountability, taking responsibility for guiding your own happiness. And the third is identification, which is identifying what are the things that bring you real, authentic joy. And they might not be big things. It might be the way flowers look in that one corner of your yard, or it might be the way the sunlight hits a tree, or it could be anything. Having a cup of tea in the morning and relaxing before you go to work. They can be bigger things. It's just, and your list is your list. It may change. And then the fourth part is about centrality, they call it. It's like making, as you do identify what truly brings you fulfillment and well-being, then weaving that more centrally into your life rather than leaving it as the last thing, A lot of us have, when we get all our work done, then we get to do something fun. So it's all a balancing act, of course, but maybe integrating those things as you go along that bring authentic happiness. Do you want to work on writing this, or should I tell you just the exercise? You take it home and do it at home.
Yes.
Home? Is that the yes? Okay. Very simple. 4 minutes. Just write for 4 minutes, nonstop, stream of consciousness, everything that brings you joy. And you could do it another day, and you'll have a different list, but maybe some of the similar things. But it's just priming the pump for flooding yourself with those things and identifying them for you, bringing them up. Oh, and you might even feel more joyful just having done that. Like, you stepped into that territory for a moment. So it's very simple as far as one tool to identify what kinds of things you want to claim more in your life. And in my private practice doing counseling and hypnotherapy, I work a lot with people who are very, very busy, as I am. So I've learned, and I did teach nurses for many years, taught Therapeutic Touch, creative visualization, and a course I started called The Nurse as Healer. So teaching nurses, so you've got really busy people. And so I learned that sometimes the best way to get ourselves to do these things is to integrate them with something else. Okay, you're taking a shower in the morning. You could experience being under a waterfall and the shower cleansing you, refreshing you, carrying away all your tension, stress. That's one example. Or driving to work, you can sing. I used to sing improvisationally as I drove. You can sing your prayers. I talked to someone that I was working with who was seeking to get a regular practice of walking going because, of course, doing physical activity uplifts the spirit and as well as is healthy for the body. So she was then reporting to me that she was successful. She was getting that integrated in her life, and she had also wanted to make space for prayer. And so she had this whole regimen of how, because she lived on a hill, walking up the hill, she was like asking to be released of things that weren't working. And then at the top, by a big tree, she would open to her experience of her higher power and just be there a bit in that natural setting. And then walk down the hill with praises and prayers of gratitude, and it was a whole little thing. It took her 20 minutes, and she got to pray and let go of some baggage and have a good walk. So, we can put all that together. So awakening joy is kind of what I've been talking about just now. And living the spirit. Now, that could mean a lot of different things to different people because everyone's life of the spirit is their own. Someone was telling me recently he wanted to get closer to the God of his understanding, and I thought that was a well-said statement because we each have that God of our understanding, spirit, how we understand the Holy Spirit. Could be a sense of that spirit within us. It could be a sense of our higher power, of God, of nature, of goddess, whatever it is for you. Then how do you live that each and every day so it becomes a living practice? I've actually been somewhat jealous of Muslims in my life, mainly because devout Muslims have 5 times a day that they pray. And they do it in such a way that they have a sacred washing. It's like gestures of washing. So you're cleansing 5 times a day. Right after the washing, you have your prayers. So imagine a day where you got 5 times a day you're doing that. My ex-partner used to work with a Muslim man. They were working together as builders. And so he began to adopt this 5 times a day with his building buddy, Liked it. So then it becomes a question, how do we live the spirit? I mean, is it just something we visit with once a month, once a week? Or how do we live that? And of course, your answer to that is your own, and maybe that is a quest that you go on to find ever more deeply how you might live that. And then to notice, to be aware of yourself enough to notice when you stray from connectedness with your own spirit, your own soul, spirit, nature, whatever you want to be deeply connected with, and then bring yourself back. So each of you have your own journey, as I was saying, with your higher power, with what you experience as spiritually renewing and sustaining and supportive to you. And I think what I'm going to do is, for some reason, I'm listening, I get a yes. I think it's a go. I will just share with you the first song I ever wrote in 1973. It is a song that is my experience of the Spirit. And I added verses to it in 1986 and 89. And when I first wrote it, it has a black sound to it, like an old-style black gospel song. You'll recognize that type of sound when you hear it. And so I loved it right away, and I thought, oh, one day this song should be sung by a great big black woman with a big voice like Aretha Franklin. And in the end, when I went to record the song, I sang it myself and finished the whole recording, and then I realized the theme of this first album is Spirits Walking the Wind. It's about the ancestors, not just our blood ancestors, but all those people here that we live with that were here before. And I was like, it needs to be blacker than that. I can't make that voice. So someone guided me to a wonderful singer, Janetta Bowser. She was here for a play. She's an actor, a director, and teaches theater in Georgia. So I connected with her 8 days before she left the area, and she was willing to record the song, and it was quite an adventure. She'd never been in a recording studio, although she was an amazing singer, as you'll hear. She was a little nervous, and I went with a friend, and he said he knew her better. He's the one that connected us, and he said, she's a very devout person, totally in love with the Spirit. He said, Janetta, you live here. Now give it to us. And so you'll hear. So it will be my delight to share her voice with you on this song that I often say my songs write me, so I hardly can take credit for writing them. They arise and I work with them, but they really impact me in the process. So let me just tell the mystery man here. John and Spirit, the 6th track on the first album.
Okay, I can still hear you.
Oh. See if this kindles a sense of what your own experience of the Spirit is. And I'm not going to attempt to sing with it because her voice is the one that needs to be on this.
No.
This is an intro I wrote for, by the way, this Names of God for Many Faiths, because I was trying to make clear exactly presence by
star. God is near. God
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So maybe that reminded you of some of the things that Spirit is in your life. Maybe not. Yeah. And I think to complete this first part, I might share in a moment another song that is about just living the Spirit each day in our own way. I've got this new album, for some reason, has several songs like that. Maybe it's a thematic thing on this new album, which is how the soul connects with the Spirit in this life. And that includes, of course, the spirit of nature, all of that. And so this next song that I'll share with you, it's called Every Breath a Prayer. And it's been an interesting journey. These are kind of multicultural song contexts that I'm using. The first one that you heard was a Native American style song from the first album. This second one had more of an African American sound. And this third one has kind of Celtic, maybe you could say. And it's been challenging to bridge the gap sometimes with words. When I was working on that song you just heard, I had originally written the song with the word God throughout. But some people have a different word for their higher power, so they were finding it hard to relate to the song. So I went through a lot of struggles trying to decide what to do about that. I ended up, the last line in each verse, I ended up using the word Spirit, and then I made that little introduction for the beginning that I sang, which had a lot of different names of God. But I really relate to what Rabbi Zaslow says, which is one day in our word, there's going to be one word that we can all embrace and use, and we all know what we're talking about. And it doesn't have to be, oh no, I don't like your word, oh no, I don't like your word. But that's not happened yet. So the same thing, then the same kind of thing came up with this word prayer. And so I wanted to, because that's part of the title and part of the refrain in this song, I wanted to explain what that is to me and, you know, all the different parts of prayer that could mean. For me, prayer can be an invocation. It can be a very deep connection with the Spirit. It can be a song of praise coming out of your heart, gratitude, prayers of gratitude, prayers of at-one-ment, feeling at one with Spirit. And I remember talking to a Native American elder who encouraged me to pray. And he said, well, do you know what prayer is? I said, well, I think so. He said, well, prayer is meditation. Do you know what meditation is? And I said, I think so. He said, meditation is listening. So in some way, maybe prayer is an opening and a listening to the Spirit inherent in all things or to your higher power. Could be a listening that way. And then I remember reading this book, oh gosh, The Builders of the Dawn. Some of you might have read it. And I think I remember in that they were talking about coming earth changes, trials and tribulations, and that you should be praying every day and meditating every day consistently. And I haven't been the most consistent practitioner, so I was worried, you know, oh my gosh, how am I going to get myself to be more consistent? And in the next little paragraph, it was saying, well, rest assured that when you feel imbued with a sense of deep appreciation of beauty that you see, or you feel transported by lovely music, all of these states are a state of prayer. So we can expand perhaps the original, you know, definitions of prayer, whatever they are, and I'm not quite sure what they are, and know that really it's talking about a lot of different ways of being fully present in the moment. And it's a song about in the moment. I took the phrase that I've heard in Native American teachings, every step of prayer, every breath of prayer. May we walk every step of prayer, every breath of prayer. And so that's this song, and I'm going to share that with you just in the spirit of this part of the title that I picked out of a hat, basically, but has a lot of meaning, which is living the Spirit. So let me go help back here, get that. as you listen. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Sometime you can hear me sing in person. I don't have the right kind of mic here today for that. So that's a good reminder maybe of listening to the earth, listening to God, listening to our own hearts as we move through our life that way. And I guess pretty soon here we're going to take a break, right? So I invite you, these CDs are available. I'll be at the back. I can sign them for you if you'd like. And then the second half is for questions. Is that right, Hearn? And some of you might be interested to, I don't know, I'm glad to talk with you about anything in my life that is, as long as it's been lived. Now it has a lot of parts to it. And I'm glad to share about my work in counseling, hypnotherapy. Some people are interested in past life regression work that I do. Glad to talk about any of that. Intuitive work, I've also taught intuitive development. Also glad to talk about the healing work, which is energetic healing, hands-on healing, aura chakra work, energy medicine, and the therapeutic touch that I taught to nurses and such. The medicine wheel work, all this different stuff. The music, anything. And just my own journeys of the spirit, through, I've traverse many different spiritual paths. You know, wherever the spirit is, there I tend to want to be. So glad to talk about any of that. I've experienced quite a bit of different spiritual retreats and worked with a lot of different teachers, and that's all also perhaps to some of you interesting. Whatever. You know, parenthood. I'm a parent and a grandma. I don't have as much experience as some people only have one child, but like Aletha, this is stellar child, so we're good. Yeah. So we can play some more, and I guess for 10 minutes I'll be at the back and, you know, share with you about workshops I'm doing and the tapes and CDs and stuff, and then we'll reconvene. All right then, second half, or second section. It's not exactly a half. Feel free to come closer or to stay further, whatever you please. And so I'm here to answer any questions. And one thing I noticed I was going to share with you when I first started teaching my healing workshops, I did it because of that woman I told you about, Joanne, that had the amazing healings, and I got so inspired. I just felt like I have to teach this because everybody can learn to do this. And I thought, I was living in Berkeley at the time, and I didn't know how to teach classes or to whom I could do that. But I thought, even if I have to get homeless people off the street, I'm going to teach this stuff. And I didn't have to do that. It all worked out. That was the first issue of one of those things called Common Ground. And for $20, I put my 2 little classes, and they filled up, and voila. So I had been a high school teacher. I taught in a ghetto high school for a few years in Oakland, and a Hill school as well. And so I knew I was starting this series of classes for the first time. So for 2 weeks, I worked on my lesson plans. And of course, when I showed up, Spirit had some other plans. You know, like that song, maybe your baby done made some other plans. So anyway, it was a combination of some of what I thought, but it was so much bigger than that. And what I used to notice right away from that first class on is whenever people had questions, even if there are questions that my person wouldn't know how to answer, there was the answer that would always come through that was the right answer. I'm sure a lot of you have had that experience, that kind of channeling. And a lot of my work has been, by the way, about channeling, both in the workshops and sessions with people. There's a kind of way that happens in the music. And I just love it. It's a wonderful state of being. When I taught for so many years the hands-on healing, I used to love teaching it because really what we're teaching is to step out of your personality and become that vehicle for spirit. And it's so liberating. So doing it is liberating. Being in a room full of people doing it is fabulous, teaching it. And then the hardest thing for me to learn has been to do that on my own behalf in my own life. You know, I'm still working on perfecting that because I can so be there for somebody else. Sort of the healer thing, you know. A worthy challenge, though. So any questions? Yes?
I'm curious to... I'd like to hear a little bit about how you conduct the medicine wheel healing.
Okay. I have done 18 9-week series of that course. This summer I'm going to be doing it as something I've always envisioned. I've planned it in my mind. I've often done it. Oh, Friday night we can do this, Saturday, Sunday. So I'll be doing this summer up at Shambhala Retreat Center, way up on the kind of mountainous area up above the beginning part of Dead Indians, and snow right now, but it's a beautiful center apparently. I haven't been there, but this is what people tell me. That'll be a Friday night, all day Saturday and Sunday. And so I'll shift it a little bit, and then on that retreat workshop, we're going to then have 4 or 5 days after that for people who really want to do deep retreat. So let me just answer your question then. What I have done with it is basically what I was guided to do again. I'll tell you a little bit about how it got originated for me to do this, and then I'll describe how it kind of choreographed itself. Basically, I had been working a lot with the medicine wheel teachings, and they were very, very central in my own spiritual walk and very personal to me. And although I taught many, many workshops and trainings for years, I never mentioned it to anybody because I thought, who am I to put my spiritual thing on these people? They're here to learn the healing arts, or they're here to do their personal transformation. I'm not going there. But I had been teaching a group of people out of Grants Pass for a couple of years. And I'd really felt like I'd taught them everything I knew to share with them that they wanted to learn. And so we had actually completed our series. That I kept doing one thing after another, and they're like, oh, we want more. And so I felt like I did it up. That was it. And then I was retreating on Mount Shasta, where I go a lot for a spiritual pilgrimage of my own. And I did that around the time of the harmonic convergence, but not on the convergence, because I was aware it'd be too many people. So I went to some land that I've owned with friends since 1970, isolated ridgetop land in Mendocino County. And then after the epicenter of the convergence, I went to Shasta, and I was retreating there. And a friend that's been my friend for many, many years there is a spiritual astrologer, and he did a little update for my aspects. You know, he said, oh, you're going to be teaching something that's going to ground people. And I was like, hilarious, because I felt I was the most ungrounded person. I thought that was just a scream. But within a day, I began to receive all this guidance that it started with me feeling like I wasn't done with that group of people. Though we finished this 2 years, I felt like there's something more I'm supposed to share, but I don't know what it is. Then all this guidance started to come through, and it went on for 2-3 months, being shown how to teach the medicine wheel as a doorway into people deepening their journey within their own soul, with spirit, with nature. So it was like one of those things where you're trying to go to sleep, and then there's all this stuff about what you're going to do in the West, and then I'm writing on little scraps of paper. I developed all these different folders for the directions. So what it became, and the way I did those 9-week series, which you were in, one of those, was the first meeting was an overview of the whole wheel, and then an entry into the South. I usually start in the South, which is the place, if some of you know the medicine wheel, and it has different tribal assignments to different things, sometimes different in different tribes. But the one that I worked with was the South being the place of the child, the newborn, you know, open heart, empty mind, coming from heart, innocence, trust, that kind of thing. We started in the South. And there would be processes we do in the workshops that are inner journeys, but also more and more as I did this series, I would take it out on the land. So I can't remember if you were in one of those where we went out each time on the land. So then there would be certain things in each meeting that would be a journey to go on for yourself on the land. I always met in places that had inside meeting space in case it rained, but mostly were outside. Some of those series were entirely outside because the weather was benevolent. So questing that way on the land with each direction. So we'd go from the South, and then the next meeting would be the West, and there'd be an invitation to carry that direction into the whole week. So you're getting infused for the whole week. If you're open to it, to the degree you're open to it, you are getting guided during the week through that direction. So if you really indicate to yourself you're willing to be open to the South, you know, for example, I used to talk about, you know, kind of walks I'd go on that I'd give to my inner child. Like my walk might be, well, I can walk 3 miles. But if I let my inner child do the walk, she's like, ooh, look at these manzanita bushes. Let's go under there, you know. It's like, so inviting those aspects. And the West being, you know, the shadow, the dark, the death and rebirth, dream time, power, gratitude, some of those qualities, and then the elements of each direction. So we'd go around, each week would be a different direction, and then it was a 9-week meeting. So one was the introduction. There's 7 directions. The way I teach it is the 4 cardinal directions: Mother Earth, well, Grandmother Earth, I like to say, Grandfather Sky, because that kind of embraces the native sense of the benevolence of the earth and the sky. It's, you know, the grandparents in their way were just very, very benevolent presences. And then Great Spirit that dwells at the core of ourselves and in all things. And then the last meeting is more ceremonial, and there's no cost for the last meeting because it's in ceremony. And one of the things that the last meeting encompasses is what I call dancing the wheel awake. So each person then stands in the center, uncolored by directions. Like all these directions are in the nature, like the seasons, the times of day, the dark, the light, the male, the female, all of that. But then there's our true nature that's really infinite and not colored or lived through any one direction. So standing in that, then stepping into, for each person within themselves, working with their own mandala of the directions, stepping into the South, and then letting the body play what the south is, each person within themselves. So we have, space around us. And then back into the center where you're not colored by that, and then into the west, and then back. And I've had some amazing revelations doing that within myself, and also when the group is doing it. I try and do my inner work when people are doing theirs. It helps me pace them, and it makes me it's more like deep democracy. We're all journeying together, which I think is true. So I remember one time doing the mandala of the directions like that and going, oh my God, I went so deep into the west, into the darkness, and it just blew me away because I came up in the light. It was like I was tunneling through something. So that's a way of owning it for ourselves. All those are like our shield of the directions that we carry with us, so we can tap into it any time for balance. Like if we get imbalanced in the west, which we're overly into doom, gloom, darkness, that's the negative, less useful octave of the west. We could draw upon the east, which is its opposite, the light, the naturally illumined self, which is there, inherent in us, if we just unveil and let it be what it is. Or if the north, which is wisdom, maybe we're getting a little too adultified in our wisdom. We need to play in the south and bring some balance there. So it's always a mandala that you take with you. It is your being, and you can draw upon all those parts of your being to be the fullness that you are. And then so for the last meeting, then, after that, we build a medicine wheel together, and then we use it for healing. There's a way of journeying in spirit within the medicine wheel for healing. And then we have a giveaway, a great big giveaway, and people give, sometimes it's a giveaway, aspects of the giveaway, or people just put things for people to take. Sometimes it's like, I feel to give you this, I feel to give you that. And then there's a feast, because all ceremonies end with a feast. So the whole thing to me is a ceremony. It's like a quest. And I remember hearing some of the hallmarks of the Vision Quest. I became very interested in the Vision Quest just for the salvation of our youth and ourselves. And my son did 2 quests, one at 14 and one at 20. So I immersed in knowing about his things and then got inspired to go on one myself. But they say about the Vision Quest that, and they call it, the people that I train with call it a ceremony. They say the ceremony begins when you decide to go on that quest. From that moment, you're on it. So all that incidental stuff, like you trying to pack all your stuff, and that's all part of it. Yeah, and the quest that I did was a 4.5-day quest out in the Inyo Mountains, and my son did a 3.5-day with the younger people the year before. But one of the things I got a lot out of is before going on this 4.5-day quest, I wouldn't say required, but it was that kind of, you just do it. It was the prelude to the actual quest is what they call a medicine walk. It's a dawn to dark walk, fasting. You go to a place of your choosing, and you let yourself be guided, basically. You can lie down, you can sit, but I mean, it's like, and I do a lot of that anyway in nature. Maybe some of you do. It's like, oh, okay, I want to sit by this boulder now. Oh, I need to go put my back against that tree. I have to walk up there. So I chose Pilot Rock for my medicine walk. Not climbing it, which I'd done before, but all around. And wow, what a sacred, powerful place that is. I've just had a profound connection with it ever since. So that's something you could do, a medicine walk. It's not so complicated. Doesn't even take any food. You don't have to carry too much. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers enough what you wanted to know. Yeah. And I tend to share chants and songs there, not only Native American ones, but ones that empower those kinds of unions with those different elements, if you see what I'm saying. Same with the meditations. There's some Christian mystic ones. There's, it's a universal thing. That's why I love the medicine wheel. One other thing I love about it is it honors the darkness. A lot of spiritual paths lean on, the light. And this is a place to honor the darkness and what it can gift us with, and how it too can take us into the heart of the spirit. So I just do love it for that. Other questions? You can tell I'm a blabbermouth. All you have to do is ask one thing. Yes?
I was curious, Nancy, do you incorporate any of the Hawaiian traditions, kahuna traditions in your work?
Oh, I would love to. I feel a deep resonance with Hawaii and the Hawaiian material that I have read. I don't know enough about it. If I knew it, I would incorporate it in a heartbeat. I love the chants. I love the land, the aina, as they call it, and I'd love to learn more about that. I keep wanting to do that, so one day. Then if I did, yeah, it would be in there. I keep wondering, where are those Hawaiian chants on my albums? They haven't showed up yet. Yeah. I'm also kind of interested in the Jewish mystical tradition, and partly that's because I am half Jewish by ancestry, although I was never raised in that tradition at all, to the point where I didn't even know I was half Jewish till I was 17. I was applying for colleges, and my dad said, well, don't be surprised if you don't get in. I'm like, well, why? I should be able to. And he's like, oh, they have quotas. I'm like, well, what is that? I don't even know what you're talking about. He said, you know, for Jewish people. I'm like, well, what has that got to do with me? So it was yeah, I didn't find out till late on, but I have been sometimes going to Rebbe Zaslow's fellowship there, and I love the songs and the way they walk there, spirit walk there. It's beautiful. The dances. Yeah.
Thank you. You talked about during the first half, a lot about spirit.
Yes.
And you had said that everybody finds spirit in their own way. And I thought maybe if you were open, perhaps you could share with us your journey of finding spirit over the years.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's an encompassing question.
It's what they call an open-ended question.
That's a great question. God, we could be here all night. Well, I remember, for some reason, that question brings up a memory of being 2.5. And that was kind of a fruitful time for me. There were different things that were kind of showing up at that time. And one of them was, I remember standing on the lawn of my aunt and uncle's house where I was living with my mom while my dad was in the war. And looking up at the sky and going, oh my God, I forgot where I came from. Where was it? And it's like, it's up there, but it's not the sky. I mean, it was a sense that I came from somewhere else. I don't know what that is. But concurrent with that time period, my mother had started singing Christmas carols to me from a beautiful book that showed pictures of angels and children, angels kind of coming down to children, kind of a place like Austria or something, and animals there, like deer and rabbits. And the songs were so beautiful. They're just the typical Christmas carols, just my mom's voice singing them, and the pictures were so wonderful that I kept thinking, well, that's how we're supposed to live here. Why isn't that happening? The people and it felt like a lot of harmony in the pictures and then the beautiful songs. So, I don't know, those were some dim sense of things. And then I was raised by agnostics. See, I didn't even know I was Jewish on my dad's side. My mom was raised by Methodists. She wasn't going there. So I didn't have anything to feed my spirit of a religious or sacred variety, and I was jealous of other kids because we had neighbors and a little girl I played with, and they had a sukkah booth for sukkah. But I would ask my parents, why can't we have that? No, we feel it's better you and your sister decide for yourselves later, as sort of this intellectual thing. And then I wanted a rosary. I went to my friend's Catholic thing. There, no, you can't have that. And then we lived in Europe. I lived in England 2 years, and we traveled on the continent. And my parents were enjoyers of the arts, and we'd go to these cathedrals, and they'd be, oh, look at the 14th century sculptures. And I'd be having mystical experiences in the back, with Mary and Jesus, and had a very profound experience with Jesus visiting me at 12, and things that they weren't supportive of. It was kind of horrifying to me. It was such a profound experience for me. And I remember telling my mother, I tried to find words, and I said to her, he came in me, because it felt like Jesus merged with me. And she said, oh my God, did someone rape you? And that was just so, it was like, shut down. So it was that kind of thing. But in the end, I've been grateful to them because they didn't color me with any prototype. And so I have found my way, and it's been a journey. My sense of, I had some spiritual experiences around the time I was working with that counselor. In fact, he is an interesting person. He was like a spiritual teacher for me. It's kind of an interesting story. He was recommended to me by a friend who used to teach enlightenment intensives. And this man said, because I was really looking for a therapist, he said, he tried all these different therapists, and he he always came down, even though he taught enlightenment intensives and he went to them. He said he'd get enlightenment experiences come down. He said, I went to George, I never came down. So I was like, what a recommendation. So I went to George, and George, as it turned out, I didn't know who George was. It was just a recommendation. I was in Berkeley, he was in Pacifica, so I'm driving all that way, an hour and 15 minutes, because it's supposed to be the right person, which it was for me, even though I wanted a woman initially. But he was a really amazing guy, because he was a seller of janitorial supplies by day. He wasn't certified as a therapist, and he was the kind of person, this is how he worked with you. He would, part of his work, I mean, it wasn't everything, but part of it was gazing into your eyes and training you into a spiritual state. So, I mean, it was really quite a gift, and he died a few months later, unexpectedly. I was very lucky to be able to work with him. So he opened something in me, and I felt like working with him, I began to live from my soul and from my spirit. And I think before that I was pretty neurotic, you know? Not that I'm totally devoid of that now, but it's a different, things really got different after I worked with him. I had an enlightenment experience in Berkeley where I lived, and I went back to my next session. He's like, oh my God, it happened on your own. I was hoping it happened in the session, oh well. And then he sort of taught me how to work with my cellular structure to let my body know to catch up to this new frequency. And anyway, so he was part of my journey. I studied Zen in Hawaii and lived in a Zendo. And that was very centering for me at the time. I was going through a lot, and it was like strong, got very strong there and very centered. And did some more Zen practice. That was, that first Zendo was Koan study. You know, the kind of questions, like what is the sound of one hand clapping is one of the famous ones. And they were working on the whole Zendo in this retreat that I initially was in before I started living there was working on one koan, and I didn't like that one because I'd fallen in love with Ramana Maharshi, you know, who am I and all that. And I was saying to this Zen master, well, I want to do that question. He's like, well, okay. He gave me a different koan, and it was, who is listening? Who is the master who is listening? That was the koan. And then he said, if I wanted, I could do who is listening. And I got a lot out of that one. Some real little breakthroughs. And then I studied with a Korean Zen master in California when I came back from Hawaii, because I was going through some stuff again. I was like, oh, Zen worked, that was centering, I'll try that. This is very different. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Sun Sanim, the Zen master there. He's a Korean man. He was a general in the Korean army. And that was his kind of style. He had a big cudgel, and sometimes he'd, you know, whack you or I remember one time I had an individual meeting with him, and you know, you bow and you go in, and we're talking a little bit, and then he takes his cudgel and points it at my belly button. He says, you got to have strong center. That's the kind of guy he was. But one of the gifts I got from that path was their wonderful essence of their path is don't know mind. And so when I first went to do some meditation at their center, I called them on the phone. They said, yeah, you can come Wednesday night an hour early, and we teach the new students how to do our meditation. So I was okay. So I went there an hour early, and they're like, we sit, you know, cross-legged, and we align our spines. I'm like, yeah, I know how to do this. They said, we watch our breath. I'm like, yeah, I know how to do that. And then they're like, we have a mantra. And I was, that's different. And they said, when we breathe in, we say to ourselves, clear mind, clear mind, clear mind. When we breathe out, we say, don't know. So it coincided with a time in my life where I was plagued by don't knows because I didn't know anything. I came back from Hawaii. I didn't have a job. I didn't know where I was living. I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I was distraught by don't knows. But after that evening, I was like, embrace the don't know. So it's been a good thing. We could do that now if you want, or we could just do more questions. What?
I was just repeating it.
Yeah, let's do it for a moment. Yeah. I want you to try it because I tell you what, it has really been a great little mantra, and I've shared it with a lot of people, and they get a lot out of it. You might too, we just don't know. We just don't know. So you can align your back and just get comfortable where you're sitting so you're not forcing yourself to be straight, but just, you know, a good sort of plumb line of your spine hanging from your head type thing. And then you can notice your breathing, that, of course, the out-breath is always relaxing your body, and the in-breath brings fresh life force in. That's always going on. And we'll ding this little bell. And as you breathe in, then you can say to yourself at your own pace, clear mind, clear mind, clear mind. As you breathe out, don't know. And just continuing with the in-breath when it arises for you, clear mind, clear mind, clear mind. With the out-breath, don't know, in your own rhythm. And if thoughts arise, you can simply say to them with your breath, clear mind, clear mind, clear mind. And with the out-breath, don't know. And just continue that way. And you might notice that between the breaths, sometimes there's a pause of just quiet. As you continue breathing in, clear mind, clear mind, clear mind. And with the out-breath, don't know. And the bell will invite you to come to eyes open. If you want to continue meditating through what we're doing, you can. Or I'm open to continuing. Do I hear a yay or nay on that? Anyway. Anything you want to share about how that was for you?
Very peaceful.
Very peaceful. Me too. So settling. So didn't stop there, my spiritual journey. I did Vipassana meditation with Goenkaji. Some of you are familiar with Vipassana. He's a man from India and studied with his teacher in Burma. Did 3 10-day retreats in Vipassana. And all throughout, nature was super important to me, especially after I got this land in Mendocino with my friends in 1970, ridgetop land, very isolated. And because I was teaching high school and desperate to get out of Oakland in the summers, and I had this land, I would stop my rental every June, put my stuff in storage, and go live at this land in a treehouse that had no walls, just a roof, and which worked most of the summer in Northern California. Usually in August there would be 3 days of rain. It would be a lot of cardboard and plastic attempts to kind of get shelter. But I bonded really profoundly with nature, with the land, the spirits of the land, and so I count the land as a major spiritual teacher for me, that land in particular, and that became a doorway to all kinds of places in nature. Shasta is a big one for me. That is like I said, a pilgrimage place for me. It's a place of deep spiritual renewal. Even just cross-country skiing on Mount Ashland so I can look at it, it gives me a lot that way. And I actually think that it is a lot of the power behind my creating these songs comes from Shasta in particular, nature places in general. So it's a very strong spiritual connection for me, is that. And then listening to spirit, I don't know how to define that exactly, but it's often a sense of at-one-ment with spirit. When I receive songs, it feels very ecstatic, like an ecstatic kind of union. It's an amazing experience, especially the melodies for some reason, which often come in tongues. They don't, maybe 10% of them or 15% come with some English lyrics. Most of them aren't just even a la-la melody. They're often in tongues, kind of, speaking in tongues. Which I used to do a lot when I was on the land by myself up there in that ridgetop land. I would go walking in nature and I would feel like this, overcome with this gratefulness at the grace of the place where I was walking or something, and I would have to speak of it, but it wouldn't seem like what English would do. So it would be things like, Yalahua Malacha, it would just pour out of me in these other tongues. So I do love speaking in tongues. Yeah. And I feel that doing my guided work is a spiritual path for me, working with clients, because I have to be in a channeling mode, a not Nancy Bloom personality mode as much as possible. And some really amazing things happen, and it feels the presence of spirit feels very strong there. And that's a process sometimes of walking through great darknesses with people, or opening to breakthroughs, or all kinds of things like that. And oddly, washing the dishes is where I get a lot of songs. And strangely, I still have my resistance to doing them. I don't know, I've got a pile of them at home right now. You'd think I'd be going, yay, dishes. Yeah. And then raising my son was like amazing, because I honestly think he raised me. He's a very wise old soul. And it was a great joy to be his mother, and just stepping on that path, which took a lot of faith. A lot of my journey has been a fear-faith continuum journey, where I'm just have to notice where faith is slipping into fear, and kind of, oh, I'm slipping to the fear part, get back to the faith. But trusting and being guided all the way to do what was right for him always was what was right for me. As far as places I was guided to live because of him and all of that. Now I get to be a grandma, and it's a great delight to be around my son and his wife. They're such phenomenal parents. They're so loving, and oh my God, the parents we would have all wanted. Some of us got, maybe. Yeah. So I love humor. I think humor is a spiritual thing. In doing my work with people, sometimes even almost every single session I can say, I can't even think of one that this wasn't the case. The most devastating, dark, horrendous things that people are working on, there's always a moment in that session where everything moves into humor. And I'm not creating it, they're not creating it. It's like almost like spirit's creating that. It's like and then once we're in the humor, everything loosens and lightens, and it's just a blessed moment. So anyway, that's kind of spiritual. Dance, I love dancing and sounding and singing. That's highly spiritual to me. I think I'm by nature more of the moving, singing mystic type. Sit on the cushion, I've done a lot, but I think I'd get a lot of mileage out of that. I look at Aletha, because she's that way too, I think. Yeah. Thank you for asking. That was a great question.
Thank you for sharing.
I'm glad to. It's funny, I've contemplated lately how the word question is like the word quest. And I don't really know what it means, but something.
Questing for truth.
Questing for truth, that's right. Yeah. Somebody said questions are more important than answers, and that's probably true. Maybe it's the don't know thing. I want to hear about all of you. It's sort of like, this could sort of be like we're staying up all night with a friend and we want to talk story like they say in Hawaii. But
I just have a question about questing.
yeah.
Is it better to do it with a group that oversees them?
That is a very good question, speaking of questing. Oh, I'll repeat the question. Yeah, Abby was asking about questing. Her question was, is it better to do it in a group with someone overseeing your quest. Is that what you mean? Or on your own? Was that the? I think it would be very individual. And I'll say more about that. My image of questing was always you do it by yourself. And then when I encountered this questing method that Stephen Foster and Meredith Little did, who were he's since died, amazing Vision Quest guides, I was like, they're doing it with a group of people. But I did that, and it was just a different model than what I had in my mind. I'd done some questing solo things, like in the desert and stuff like that, just for a day or two. But it was an interesting model that they did. One of the things that they did is they had a circle at the beginning for 2-3 days. We worked in circle for each person to identify what they were questing on. And I thought, I thought you just go out there and open up and spirit guide you or something. So I was like, I was a little resistant to deciding what I was going to quest on at the beginning, but I thought it had value. You know, for me it was realizing I did have something I needed to quest on, which was my son leaving and all of that, the end of that whole cycle. And not some uncertainty, could I nurture myself without that relationship there? And also I had gone through the end of a 12-and-a-half-year relationship right before that. So it was that. So it was good to identify it, I thought. And it was a different feeling being out there knowing that there was someone 1.5 miles over here and someone 2 miles over there or someone 1/2 mile over there. It was just different. Didn't make it less challenging. There were some scary things that happened on my quest, and I still was out there by myself with those things, basically having to do with violent people that weren't expected to be there, so that was scary. Not what you want. I think they both have value, and my sense is if you did a quest on your own, I think it'd be very useful to have someone, to be an elder, send you out there to welcome you back. It's almost like a ceremonial kind of thing, an honoring. So they did that for us. Each of us would step into this stone circle. When they sent us out, they'd sage us off, and they said to each of us quietly, "Now you're invisible." And then when we came back, they saged us off, welcomed us back, and they said, "Do you agree to live by what you got out there?"
Wow.
That was intense, so I agreed, and I forgot that what I'd gotten out there was this mandate to bring my music out. I totally forgot about that, and then I was telling the whole story to my friend. She's like, "Yeah, but what you got out there." Oh no, that actually took 10 years. Now all the songs that I was supposed to bring out, they're out there. So the quest is finally finished. It's taken a long time. Yeah, 10 years. It was 1996. Now it's 2006. So I found value in that, sending out and welcoming back, and that there was a caring presence. I think that probably is how it was done in the old days. An elder or a wise person or a shaman or a medicine person would prepare the initiate going out. You'd probably do a series of sweat lodges and preparations. Then you go out and you're on your ledge or whatever. But you have that sense that there's someone in base camp holding the space for you, praying for you. Some of those traditions, they actually went and checked on the person, other ones not, So it was a revelation for me doing it in a group because it was about tribe and community, and our culture is so fragmented, it felt like there was some value in that.
Yeah.
It's not always easy to find. And the other thing about my quest and my son's quest, both of which were down in the Inyo Mountains, is none of that tribe and community that we made lived where we lived, whereas now they're having things like Boys to Men for young men, and they know everybody because they all live around here, and that's kind of a neat thing in itself. Yeah. The other thing is you can create your own questing. There's a wonderful book about it, and unfortunately, I don't remember the title. It's by Denise Linn, Linn. She's Native American, and it has some wonderful suggestions of how to create your own quest. It doesn't have to be our idea of what Indians did, but it can be the form of quest that's right for each person. I like the book because it's sort of liberating that way. It gives different ideas. You're welcome.
I have another question.
I was just wondering, since you said that about when you were 2.5 and you looked up at the sky and you said, "Whoa, where did I come from?" there's a book by Scott Mandelcourt called From Elsewhere, and it's about people who have ET souls or not, or just feel like they're from another planet, stuff like that, star people. So I'm just wondering if you've had any
Answer to that.
yeah, and just connection with star people or information, wisdom, just any kind of otherworldly experience or knowledge.
And by star people, you mean beings from other planets, Venus and such like that?
Generally, yeah.
You know, that's a really interesting question. I've had some close encounters of the second and, let's see, what's the kind of movie? Is that the third kind?
Third.
So I've had the first and second kind. So I've had that. That's an interesting question. When you ask it, I feel a certain affinity there. The Venus thing. I don't know. I haven't explored it a lot, oddly. And I tend to be like that with a lot of my stuff. People ask me, I say I do channeling of readings or healing. Well, who do you work with? What are your guides? I'm like, I don't know. It just works. So maybe I have that connection and I'm not paying much attention or checking it out. I'd be open to your feedback. Maybe you're noticing something. Yeah. Anything else? Questions, answers, comments?
Do you deal with angels?
I do. I have a great affinity with angels, which I had since I was very young. I love angels. And again, I don't do the names and that's Uriel or Gabriel. I just don't. It's like I feel angelic guidance and resonance and connection and kind of leave it there. I don't know why that is, the non-specific way that I operate. Maybe it just works and so it's okay.
But you sense they're of the light, so that's what's important.
Pardon?
You sense that they're of the light, that's what's important.
Yeah. That was interesting about the star beings. Now I was sort of, I have to explore that further. I haven't been too enthused about the ET thing. Mainly those experiences that I had were a bit disturbing, and maybe that's just my own mistrust. So I don't know about that.
What kind of experiences?
Ooh, well, let's see. I don't know if I want to. I'll tell you one. This was widely experienced by. I was living in Mendocino at the time, just south of the town of Mendocino in Albion, and I was with my son, who was 3, and my then partner, and we were all in this meadow, and it was getting dark, and we saw this, thing. Let's see which way it was moving across the southern sky from the east to the west, and it was like one orb here and 2 smaller ones, and they were all going like this toward the ocean, and they stopped and went in a diagonal toward us. And I'm like, let's go in the house. So we did, and it was all, we all were like, whoa. And then everyone within about an hour's drive from us, or hour and a half, it seemed like everybody that was looking at the sky saw that. So people called in. A friend of mine was a DJ on the radio station. All these people, we turned on the radio, people were calling in, and he called somewhere, the government or something, and they said, oh, it's a military blah, blah. It wasn't. It was like, so that was that one. And I had one on my vision quest, and I described it to my son. I won't tell you about that one. It's a little closer thing. He said, Mom, that was a close encounter of the second kind. I was like, stay back, you guys. Yeah. But it's interesting that they played my album the whole entire time at the UFO conference. So maybe there's something going on. Yeah. What is that quote from Shakespeare? There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than, I forget the rest of it, than your mind has ever thought of or something. Than you have ever dreamed of. So I think that's true. It's such a vast, we don't even have a name for it. And so my sense is we have our little guesses, but yeah. And we're vast. It's my true belief that we're each a vast presence, infinite in nature, and that I think that's why I've been interested all this time in working with parts of people, like the different medicine wheel resonances that are like the different 7 archetypes that way, and I was trained in psychosynthesis, which is a way of working with deepening your connection with your soul and living from the soul more fully, and also a way of interfacing with parts of self that have grown up around the soul or as expressions of the soul. And if they're not working for you, help uplift them or transform or transmute them so they become allies, you know. Yeah, so I've liked that because I just feel like we are infinite, you know. So we don't have to be feeling limited. Yeah. I've been playing with I don't know if many of you are conversant with the Byron Katie work. I know just a teeny bit about it, but I'm enjoying the 4 questions. And so what I've been noticing is just how it feels when I work those questions. And you've probably done more of this work than I have, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But my impression from an article I read, and I did an evening with someone who teaches her work, is if you find a fixation in yourself that's uncomfortable, like maybe you feel certain people are not liking you, or you feel unconfident about something, and that's your perception that you're not good at it, then the first question is this true? So often what I'm noticing as I work those questions, like, I don't know, maybe it isn't. Second question, do you know it's true for a fact? Well, no. How does it feel for you if you hold that belief that you've held? Not so good, kind of constricting. How does it feel when you let it go? Oh, then it feels more like I can be in my fullness. So I'm enjoying that. So when I find new things that work, I'm liking them. I have been working in the last few years with an acupressure way of making transformation, and I'm finding it's very effective, so I'm enjoying that. Yeah, and I do have a strong belief in the power of, as I said, rites of passage and honoring transitions, blessing ways. I mean, it's a Navajo term, but they've been used in the last 20, 30 years increasingly by people to form a circle of support and empowerment around a person about to give birth. But that same idea of a blessing way could be used. Originally, they were used a lot by Navajo people to welcome back someone who'd been at war or to send them off to a war. And for some reason, the other night, I was thinking, we should be doing blessing ways for the people coming back from Iraq. It's a hard thing. So, yeah, to mark our passages, whether it's a decade passage or a loss we've been through or empowering a new step, or I just think there's something to be said for community support and doing that in a sacred way. But I think we're at time, right? 5 after 9. So thank you for being here. You all have been wonderful to share with, and I really appreciate sharing with you.
Thank you.
Usually I do everything in a circle, so then we'd hold hands and do the circle thing. I don't know if you want that, but we'll know that we're holding each other in that embrace. Yeah. And I'll say aloha. Yeah. Somebody was telling me aloha is like the ah is about the all that is. Lo is connecting heart to heart, and ha is like sharing that breath of all that is with each other or something. Anyway, it's kind of cool. Thank you for watching Life Passages. I hope this was food for thought. Take care and keep living a life that you find fulfilling. Be well.
RVML Resource Center is a volunteer-operated federal 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization. RVML is dedicated to providing easy access to a comprehensive collection of information on a variety of metaphysical, spiritual, and personal development subjects. RVML accepts and appreciates all donations. Material and monetary contributions are fully tax-deductible. This recording is not copyrighted, and permission is granted to broadcast, exhibit, or duplicate all or part of this program for non-commercial educational purposes. This live presentation was organized and presented by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. For more information, please visit rvml.org.